"Hey, boy, sit down!" Mitch shouted at Woody, imitating Coach Gene in a jocular manner. The whole time, Kevin kept steadily making his noise. "Oh!" waiting to see if Coach Gene would notice and actually fuss at him in a silly manner too. This was known as the pre-class cut-ups. The boys did everything they could think of to get Coach Gene mad and hopefully, in the case of Mitch and Kevin, get him to behave like Kurt Job of cable TV. Such was the case at this very moment, as Kevin decided now was a good time to ask Coach Gene a question. "Hey, Coach, how long you been teaching?" Kevin shouted in a very loud and annoying manner. "Since we're not..." Before Kevin was able to finish his sentence, Coach Gene turned to him and said in an authoritative manner, "I want you to keep your mouth shut and don't start asking me no questions." "Oh!" As Coach Gene continued his verbal assault on Kevin, the words began to fly out of his mouth, faster and more incomprehensibly with every passing second. "You act the same way? It's proof. I'll send you to the office. Oh. I told you to get off my butt, and I'm going to put down teacher harassment and make sure you get suspended from school." Oh. Coach Gene paused, only long enough to catch his breath, before continuing. "I'm going to make sure you get suspended from school if you bother me one more time. Is that clear?" With all of Coach Gene's fast talking and slurring, it was only clear that what he was saying wasn't clear at all. Also, Coach Gene's thick northern Mississippi accent made every word coming out of his mouth almost incomprehensible. Kevin did his best to hold a straight face, but he wanted very much to fall down laughing at this ridiculous scene now unfolding before him. Asking what would be normally considered a legitimate question to any ordinary teacher had turned into a highly amusing spectacle. It also did not help Kevin's attempt at his best poker face, when Moody decided now was a good time to continually say, "Oh!" after everything Coach Gene said. For some strange reason, Coach Gene was unaware that unnecessary noise was being made after every sentence he uttered. "You gonna play your silly game, I'll make sure you get suspended from school. You bug me one more time," Coach Gene continued, in a very annoyed manner. Another boy, pretending to be blowing his nose, made obnoxious noises in the tissue, and a second boy began making squeaking noises with his shoes against the hard tiled floor. However, these things did not stop the rapid fire of comments now spurting out of Coach Gene's mouth. Surprisingly enough, at this point he actually answered Kevin's question. "I've been teaching a whole lot longer than you've been alive." Mitch began to laugh uncontrollably as Kevin responded in a condescending tone. "You have? Golly!" Speaking even faster, Coach Gene continued. "You coming here running your smart mouth like you know something." He then paused only briefly to look at Mitch, who was now giggling uncontrollably like a little girl. "Don't you get started with him again," Coach Gene warned. Mitch looked up at Coach Gene in genuine confusion, but responded only in a whisper. "I didn't do nothing." Mitch felt that this was Kevin's moment to shine, and it was better not to steal any of his spotlight. It was at this moment, 12 p.m., that the second bell for the girls rang out loudly and promptly. Usually the bell increased the amount of noise made in the classroom, but under the circumstances no one made a peep. The loud ringing of the bell prevented anyone from being heard for a full 3 seconds. After only a brief pause, did Coach Gene continue his ranting. "The problem with y'all is y'all don't know when to stop something. You don't know when to stop." Now looking at Woody, Coach Gene began speaking faster and more forcefully. "And apparently he don't know when to stop, or he wouldn't keep on bugging me." Woody put on his most innocent face, being caught a little off guard at the fact that the focus was now on him, even though he had nothing to do with Kevin's question. However, the focus was only brief, as Coach Gene stared back at Kevin. After pausing only a second to take in some air, Coach Gene continued, becoming flustered by his inability to control his own temper. "What's going to happen is I'm going to forget I'm a teacher one day, and I'm going to slap you clean out of that chair. And I know what's going to happen too. Then I'm going to lose my job. And when I do, I'm coming for you." Mitch then opened his mouth and slapped his own cheek, making a popping sound, both in surprise and to ridicule the teacher at the same time. Kevin was not in the least bit intimidated as he continued to question Coach Gene in hopes of keeping the ridiculous scene going. "You gonna slap me?" Rather than answer the question, Coach Gene decided to continue his temper tantrum. At this point, Coach Gene's words were incomprehensible, between all the noise and giggling from other students. Eventually, his words could be heard again, but the words themselves created even more giggling. "And I want you to stay off my back. I've had about enough of you. And when I've had enough of you, I'm coming to your house. And I'm going to find out why your daddy can't control you.
You don't respect your daddy.
My dad's in Alabama, Kevin responded with laughter in his voice.
I will find your daddy,
Coach Gene threatened, his voice now weakening.
I want you to get off my back. I don't want to hear nothing from you.
But he is. Next week he's fixing to go to China. He's got to do some business over there, Kevin added, as if to challenge Coach Gene to go find him there. Coach Gene seemed to have run out of steam at this point and only added,
I'm going to give you about one more day or two to get off my back,
before turning his attention back to the hallway. What was really amazing about this entire verbal barrage is that it ended essentially with permission to continue the bad behavior for another day or two. It was incidents like this that encouraged people like Kevin, Woody, and Mitch to continue the harassment without fear of consequence.